All right. All right, all right, all right. I think we are live. Yep. Excellent. Let me just test the chat. Testing the chat. Just as an aside, on Nautica, my first company, online game I created, it was a derivation or an extension of MUDs, this multi-user dungeon. And they have all these channels. This is maybe the history of chat. Hey, history of chat. So on MUDs, you've got all these different channels. And the most common channel was chat. And I never really liked the name chat. And so I renamed it to gossip. And so on Nautica, there's no chat channel. There's a gossip channel. Although if you type chat, I think it goes to the gossip channel. And so maybe this is the universe's way of saying, sorry, Goju, you're going to get chat for the rest of your life, whether you want it or not. So, hey, chat. Hey, T. Okay, so today we're going to talk about keeping on. I know, right? Like, although I have to say, yeah, Taylor's just saying that gossip is a better name. Yeah, that's why I named it Gossip, because like it's the gossip channel. You're just gossiping. Although I will say that chat is a bit easier to say. So, hey, chat versus hey, gossip. But on Nautica, it's just abbreviated GOS. So it's just GOS. So it would be hey, goss. So the goss is as easy as chat, I think. Anyway, there's some random history of stuff. Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit more about coding. But before we do, in my usual form, I've got my earbuds in. And yes, I am, of course, listening to music. And I'm continuing on my binge of Dream Clinic. I just absolutely love these guys. And I'm listening to God Machines this morning. So that's this one, God Machines. And it's very chill. Where is it? I saw it. Oh, here it is. Yeah, this one. I haven't gotten to a techno part in it yet. Maybe it's there. Maybe, hey, we have a sheesh too. What's going on? Cool. We got I guess maybe I'm starting to have a little bit more regularity. So people are realizing, yeah, around 6:30 a.m. Pacific time. You know, just as an aside, I'm not normally this early in the morning, but I've kind of started working like these 20-hour days. Well, 18 to 20 hours. I don't always make it to 20 hours. Like yesterday, I think I only made it like 18. But so my schedule has been shifting. And so it's just the circadian rhythm or whatever this thing is. Taylor, I think you know what this is. Anyway, I think it keeps shifting. So hopefully I'll continue to be waking up around midnight my time, and then by then I'm ready. I'm raring to go by 6 a.m. Yeah. Speaking of coffee and tea, just so you guys know, that's right. Sometimes, believe it or not, I drink water, sparkling water. And so it's not always, although it's not just that one, because I got this one too. But I was feeling a little like low on, yeah, water. So here we are. Anyway, I'm listening to God Machines. Oh, just as an aside, I reached out to these guys and told them that I'm promoting their stuff, not because they're paying me or anything, just because I think their music is awesome. And I actually subscribed to their channel or something. And the guy that runs it, I think, pinged us back, and he actually saw us talking about his music. So seems like a really cool guy. And if you like it, feel free to give his music a sub and a like and all that. I'm a big fan of this whole paying things forward and just kind of like creating positivity. You know, we have enough of that other stuff going on. Like, we can rally together and still have fun and still be critical and try to move things forward, but I think we can do it in a way that is collaborative and empowering to others rather than a little more negative. Which brings me to our topic for today. Is I saw an article from Microsoft that I want to talk about. Microsoft's chief product officer, actually, just this morning. And I did mention I was going to try to get into this Linux thing. Well, maybe we'll try to get into that. But I also want to try to keep practicing empathy. And I've been thinking about this vibe coding, and a lot of the vibe coders have been reaching out to me and sharing some perspectives on the vibe coding video that we had, on this, this one, which is starting to get a number of views in a pretty good clip for us, given, it's tech and things, and we're just starting out. But I rewatched it, and I realized that maybe I was a little overly critical. And I think, as most of you know, I'm a work in progress. I'm not done in any capacity. I don't have any kind of delusions that I have it all figured out. And frankly, I don't ever want to have it all figured out. That just sounds so boring to me. Like, then what? And so I'm constantly trying to grow every day. And here we go. Never stop growing and learning. And so when people give me feedback, even if it's really harsh feedback, I try to distill out the noise and really hear what the signal is. And I have some emerging thoughts on this whole vibe coding. And part of it is it's me learning, right? Because keep in mind, I've been programming for like 30 years. So it's hard for me to even understand what not being able to code is like. It's sort of like if I were to ask all of you to imagine, what is it like to not be able to walk? You'd probably, many of you would really struggle with that. But then there's some people that can't walk. And so there's this really interesting point about, like, we should be empathetic to those folks. And so one of the arguments that I'm hearing from the Vibers, the ones that really love software, is they love software, but they don't know how to code. And they struggle with logic and things. And I get it. It can be hard. And so now what I'm trying to really figure out is what is the common ground? What can we do to try to find some common ground where you can enable folks who don't have a background in programming, and they can have some form of some medium where they can articulate themselves and express their ideas to help manifest kind of like the software they are thinking about, but then also do it in a way that isn't necessarily going to run into a lot of the issues that we were talking about with the vibe coding, right? Because those issues, while I'm still trying my best to practice empathy, those issues I think are still valid, right? So it's not one or the other. It's how can we support a world where both things can be true. And I don't know. I mean, part of my thought process is we enable the vibers to express their ideas, and then we can sort of manifest this high level, potentially low fidelity, rapid prototyping. And then from there, the more seasoned developers get involved and then help improve things. That's one way forward. I also think that along the same lines of never stop growing, I think that there's ways to do, I think, the vibe coding where you are doing more than just giving people the answer, right? Like, this is something that I'm really keen on with Mentor, is that Mentor doesn't just give you the answer. It could, but it's quite intentional that it's trying to help you in both the short term and the long term. So the short term is giving you the answer, but the long term is kind of like explaining, hey, this is what this does, and here, let me give you a breakdown of this, and then we can deeply understand what this means. So you aren't just getting a fish, right? Mentor's trying to teach you to fish each time. And notice that it actually tries to teach you to fish first before it gives you the fish. And that's on purpose. Is minimally, you at least have to scroll down to get the answer. These things are not accidental. It may appear accidental, but it's quite intentional the way that this thing is designed. So anyway, I wanted to mention this because I do very much want to practice empathy. And I think maybe I was getting there. On the outside, it may look like, and I'm not trying to be the victim here or anything, because I'm nobody's victim. But on the outside, it may appear as though everything is totally perfect in Goju's world. The world's his oyster. What can he not do? It's just puppy dogs and rainbows constantly. But in reality, it's not exactly that. It's far from that. And I have struggles, and I think all of us have struggles. And admittedly, I probably do have a lot of influence, and I probably don't have nearly the challenges that I had when I was like 25. People tend to listen to things that I have to say, but I work at a level now where I'm trying to influence things in a much broader space, and therefore I am interfacing with people that are like maybe my peers, or maybe even like maybe more influential than I am, and I'm trying to get them to expand their horizons, as well as helping me expand my horizons. But so needless to say, I'll run into a lot of challenges along the way. And that's part of life, right? Like, I fully embrace this notion of you should seek out failure when I say that hundreds of venture capitalist firms have told me to take a hike along the way. This is not an exaggeration. I mean, it literally has been on the order of hundreds. And so, yeah. So Taylor's basically saying that he agrees on the vibe coding being a good brainstorming meandering. versus a ship it to production. And that's the way I'm kind of thinking about it. And maybe there's a way to go from, like the initial prototype, and then maybe after that's established, Mentor can get involved and try to massage it to be more production quality. Like there's some ideas there, and there's things that we've been exploring. So anyway, going back to the vibe coding episode, I was probably a little bit more fiery. Largely, part of it probably had to do with the fact that I had warned the information about some of these things almost a year ago, and they didn't really seem to have too much interest in what I was saying, but now they're finally coming on board. So this is sort of like a hallelujah moment for me. But I think maybe I went a little bit too far. And I'm all about making mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. And so I wanted to come back and say, listen, this vibe coding thing, as a mechanism for rapid prototyping that's potentially low fidelity, I do think that it can have value. And I do think it is potentially a good gateway for folks that have no background in programming, to allow them the ability to create things in software that they would otherwise largely be incapable of doing. And I get that, right? There was a time where I wasn't the coder that I am today, and I wanted to create Notica. And I couldn't, right? I tried, and I failed, and had vibe coding been a thing when I was trying to do this, I probably would have used them. Just being honest, I'm pretty sure I would have been like, oh, I gotta, because learning is hard, right? It's just the fact that it didn't exist. And so the only option forward really was I just had to learn all the stuff. Now, in the long term, I think that learning is really important. And this is where it gets tricky, is finding a balance to where we can enable people to have these short-term benefits, but then progressing them toward a space where they are enhancing their skills, they're growing, I think is important. That if we just give people fish and don't focus on teaching them to fish, we, I think, are going to be in a bad situation. Because just imagine this for a second, right? We go back to the whole, I just, this is why I keep this tab open perpetually, is that if you have at least one full generation of people that are not raised under the notions of logic and reason and critical thinking, that generation will become the majority of the population at some point, and their children could be raised under the same premises. And this could send us potentially in the wrong direction, right? I think it's much harder to have parents teach their children or inspire their children to be literate, for example, if the parents themselves are not literate. Because, how do you teach your children? Likewise, if you, as a parent, don't understand the basics of logic and reason, how do you teach your child to follow these things? So you can see how all it takes is a single generation to start to marry themselves to the idea that they don't need to be able to think critically, and then we can go down this very slippery slope. It's not that you can't recover from it, but it's something that I think we need to harden ourselves against. We need to be very careful about making sure that we don't get so focused on the instant gratification that we forget about the benefits of delayed gratification. So this is like a lot of my preamble to support the idea that there, I think, is potentially this place for vibe coding, especially when it comes to low fidelity, rapid prototyping. But I also want to say that we need to keep coding. And for those people, now we're going to go to the other spectrum. Okay, so I've given the first 20 minutes or so to support the vibe coders and trying to be empathetic to their position. Now I want to take the position of the idea that we still need to code. And I want to take this position because there's also this movement that's saying we should just stop doing computer science. And in fact, when I was starting to do machine programming at Intel, like, it was back in 2016, when I started to get visibility within the company, I would give these sort of senior level presentations where I talked to the principal engineers, senior principal engineers, and fellows. And I would present sort of just to the senior technologists of the company. And I remember there was this one time I was presenting in Santa Clara in like our big auditorium, and it was basically all PEs, principal engineers and above. Because this was advanced topics, right? We were talking about like, this is going to be the future. So what does this mean? And one of the questions that I received, and it was maybe the first time that I was asked this question. I've since been asked this question hundreds of times, but at the time, this was maybe like 2017, 2018 maybe. This is the first time I was asked this question. And this principal engineer or above, he said, okay, I think I deeply understand what you're saying, and it all makes sense. So what does this do to the field of computer science? Are we no longer going to write code? And he was being totally serious. He's not asking this sarcastically, ironically, anything like that. He's just trying to say, like, what do you think as the guy that's supposedly spearheading this effort at Intel? My children are about ready to go to college, and they were going to study computer science. I think this was actually like a real thing. His son was going to study computer science, and he was like, so do I not have them study computer science now? And I said, no. I think that we need computer science as a field. I think that there's still going to be massive amounts of programming. I just think the way that we are interfacing with machines is likely going to evolve. It's going to be more conversational. And I think that's a good thing. So I was talking about this conversational programming idea long before ChatGPT and these other systems came out, because having a more interactive dialogue, I think, from my perspective, could be beneficial. Like, rather than writing a whole bunch of code, hitting compile and getting 2,000 errors, like, I think having it poke at me or having me say something like, is this looking reasonable, before I move on to my next thought, and having the system say, yeah, sort of, except this one piece you didn't quite get right. This is going to create like 1,000 errors, so just fix this. You missed a semicolon. Like that stuff can be really valuable. So if ever you've worked on a big project and you do something like you forget one semicolon or you forget a curly brace, you sometimes will get like thousands of errors, and you're like, what is going on? And then you have to find the one that's like, oh, this one caused everything. So this idea of iteration, I think, is valuable. And I was trying to articulate that. And I do think higher levels of abstraction, of interfacing with machines, is, because again, this is the way I think about it, is I think about it like us humans, or even other machines, we are interfacing with the machines. Like, we're programming, sure, but like it's about expressing ideas to the machine, and historically it's been doing this in a way that the machine understands. And now we are trying to change the situation so it's more on the level of the way humans understand the things that humans understand, which is great, right? That's actually what we've been doing for the last 60, 70 years. Machine code to assembly to things like maybe Fortran to some first generation languages. Then maybe we get to C, then maybe we get to like C++, then we get to things like Java and C#. We continue to go up. We get to things maybe like Go. We get to Python and JavaScript, and we continue to kind of edge our way up. Now, what's interesting is I don't necessarily think that this means you just continue to go to the top abstraction. No. What I think it is that you are looking for the language that is right for the problem that you're trying to solve. So, for example, when you're doing very intense systems level programming, JavaScript is not the right language. Neither is Python. And if you were to try to use those languages for that intensity of programming, it wouldn't work. Like if you try to write some firmware or a driver for a device in Python, I can tell you almost definitively that won't work because the runtime environment for Python wouldn't even be loaded at the point at which the firmware and the device driver would need to exist. So it's a non-starter. It doesn't work. So the point is you don't just jump to the top and that's what you choose. Like these different levels exist for a reason. And yes, we will continue to raise the abstraction levels for sure. And the easiest way into the field of computer science will almost always be the top level abstraction. Very much like how it is with mathematics. The reason why you don't learn calculus right out of the gate is calculus is like down here. And so instead you learn things like basic arithmetic because it's up here. And then when you can do addition and subtraction, then you go down a little bit to do multiplication and division. And then when you can do that, then you go down a little bit to do like exponentiation or square roots, and then you continue to go down. And so the point is these lower levels, they're still very valuable depending on the complexity of the problems. And maybe most people aren't functioning like at that calculus level. Sure, but some people are. So let's not necessarily throw those away. At the same time, we should not take the view where everyone needs to be a theoretical mathematician. They don't. And I think the same applies for programming. You don't need programmers that everyone is an expert at writing assembly. I think that is, overkill. So with that said, I want us to take a quick look at this article and see what the Microsoft CPO has to say. And just as an aside, I got a little bit of a giggle from this. I just saw this in my newsfeed, and as I was bringing it up, I saw that it was AOL.com, and I thought to myself, AOL? That still exists? That's cool. That's cool, man. Good for you, AOL. And I don't mean this in a snarky way. I mean this for real. The fact that AOL has survived this long, this is not easy to do. So that's great. Okay. So Microsoft Chief Product Officer says she fundamentally disagrees with the idea that people shouldn't study computer science. So this came out a few days ago. I just saw it this morning. So she's the Chief Product Officer at Microsoft. of Experiences and Devices says people should keep learning to code. Computer science isn't dead. As Aparna, and I'll just call her Aparna C, said on a podcast, and engineer roles will endure. For product managers, she said editing and taste making would be more important than ever. I'm not sure what taste making is, but maybe that's a specific product manager thing. Yeah, maybe if Ashish is still around, he might know. But so Aparna is saying she doesn't buy the idea that coding is on its way out. A lot of folks think about, don't bother studying computer science, or the coding is dead, and I just fundamentally disagree. If anything, I think we've always had higher and higher layers of abstraction in programming, right? This is what I was basically just talking about, and I agree with this. Despite fears that AI could ultimately render software engineers irrelevant, or at least materially cut down on job openings in the field, she believes that AI will only adds a further layer of abstraction in existing process of programming, which is what we were sort of just talking about. And I agree with this. We don't program in assembly anymore. Hey, some of us do. There's actually, okay, most of us don't, yeah. Most of us don't even program in C. Oh, don't show this to Tim Mattson or Tim Davis. And then you're kind of higher and higher layers of abstraction. So to me, there will be ways that you will tell the computer what to do, right? It'll just be in a much higher level abstraction, which is great. It democratizes. Yes. So this is sort of what I would try to explain and present when I was driving the machine programming movement, or involved in the machine programming movement at Intel, is I was trying to explain that we want to democratize programming. So, and what we mean by that is basically when you are trying to democratize something, it's basically like just bring it to the people so everyone can participate. It's like a democratic system in that all people can be involved. And I do agree that this natural language type of inputs is helping democratize programming. I think we just need to be careful, though, because, again, natural language is ambiguous and unstructured. And so because of those holes that exist, it's not a programming language, and it's not constrained in the same way that programming languages are. So there is a danger that you're going to have a disconnect, and then bad things can happen. Okay, let's continue. There will be an order of magnitude or more software operators. Instead of software engineers, maybe we'll have SOs, software operators. But that doesn't mean you don't understand computer science. It's a way of thinking, and it's a mental model. So I strongly disagree with the whole coding is dead. I very much agree with this. And in fact, when I teach this in my course, I teach it very much like this. I'll explain to them that I don't know what the future of programming is. I have ideas on what I think it looks like, and I do think we'll continue this trend of higher order abstractions. And by the way, I don't even think that we're hitting a small fraction of some of the major abstractions that I anticipate will exist. To give you some ideas on what I've been thinking about. First, I think that gestures are going to be incorporated. So I think having someone communicate their intentions to a machine on what they're trying to build could likely be stronger if they were able to use body language in addition to natural language to reinforce different. It's essentially giving you multiple modalities of input, even intonation in your voice, which is something that we use in normal conversation. Body language is another piece. The cadence in which you're speaking, like these are all factors. That's one. The second is visual diagrams. So drawing pictures is supremely important. In fact, I need to be doing more of that. I keep meaning to, I'll maybe try to make sure I have my tablet set up for this next stream. So that's the second one, is the diagrams. The third one, which is probably going to sound a little out there, but I've had some ideas that I thought were pretty out there at the time, and a lot of people tried to vote me off the island, and these ideas become realized much faster than I anticipated, like this one. The idea that I definitely foresee coming, and I'm fairly certain that it is going to arrive. I'm just not exactly sure in what capacity it'll arrive, like the exact embodiment. But one of the ways that I think we'll start to generate software is by thought alone. We will have something on our head, or in our head, like Neuralink. And yes, I do think cybernetics is the future. I mean, like, again, we've talked about this. We already have stuff that's getting pretty close to this, and we do have medical devices. Most of that is today meant to help us reach parity with other humans, but I think that once we realize we can do more than just parity, then we're going to use it to help make us superhuman. And examples of that already are happening with things like augmented reality glasses that I think Google and Meta and other people are coming out with. Like, these are glasses that are meant to enhance your experience so you can actually like see more, get more information. You're becoming like essentially a super intelligent or a super sensor human. So another way that I think is going to arrive in the near future is the realization of software by thought alone. And I think it's probably not actually that far away, to be honest. Like, probably within the next 1 or 2 decades, I think we'll have it. Maybe not en masse, like maybe it won't be ubiquitous, but we'll have small swaths of the population that are doing it. Just like we have a small sample of people that are using Neuralink chips in their head today, mostly for people who have lost mobility. But again, once that reaches sort of the threshold of some stabilization of the technology, and it starts to demonstrate strong benefits, then I think what will happen is the early adopters will start diving in, and then it'll be a very common thing. This is also why I'm not worried about like the singularity. So for those of you who aren't aware of what the singularity is basically this concept that at some point the AIs are going to get smarter than humans, and then they're going to like just take over the planet. And then at some point when the AIs become smarter than humans, they're just going to decide, like, do we need humans anymore? And then if the answer is no, then humans will no longer exist. And if they're super intelligent, then the idea is they'll just basically either exterminate us, or they'll just use us as batteries, right? So those are sort of like Terminator and Matrix. Those are, sorry if I just spoiled things for you. My bad. Those are really old movies, though. Anyway, first of all, I don't necessarily agree with this, because, like, I think there's going to have to be intentionality for the AIs to do this. There's going to be a reason for them to decide to wipe us out. The other part that I don't agree with is that humans are pretty resilient people, and we are all for augmenting ourselves to make ourselves better. Like, for example, we don't have padded feet like most animals do. So when we walk outside, we're at a major disadvantage because we can't walk very far, and we walk on something and it's going to cut our foot open. So what do? We invent shoes, and then we have shoes, and then turns out we can walk really far with no problems. And then it's like, oh, but other animals can travel faster than we can and further. And so, yep, we invent the bicycle. And now we can do this. So again, like if the AI is just like this new species, let's just say that it is, and it's going to be smarter than us, then we'll just be like, okay, cool. Take that technology that we built, that is the AI, and just put it in our head. And now we have the AI's capabilities, plus we have our wetware. So are they super intelligent? No, we're as intelligent as they are. And then we're more intelligent because we have the wetware that they don't have. So I don't really buy this singularity thing. I think it's like a very simplistic one-step form of thinking. And all you have to do is just, if you play chess, just think about the next move. It's just move number 2, right? It's not even like move 17. It's literally just move number 2. So they're about ready to take the queen, and then it's like, oh, we control the board, right? So, yeah, I don't think that the singularity is something that is going to happen. Yeah. So, okay. Let's continue to this article. As for the fate of program or project managers who are subject, like many other middle managers of big tech's great flattening, she expects them to endure, albeit with modified responsibilities. Taste, she said, will be more important than ever. I think I understand what she's talking about with taste. It's like it's the notion of you have a good sense of style. Right, it's like you get why. I'm just going to one thing here real quick. You get why things should be done the way that they should be done. You also get how things should look, and that you have this advantage because you kind of like can see things that the machines might struggle with. Just trying to check something on my machine here. Okay. Excellent. So I absolutely agree with that. And I think this goes back to quality. There's this deep-seated need for quality on all aspects. So right now, the way I think about the AIs is they're like really good at producing a lot of potentially low fidelity things rapidly. I think that's kind of like their superpower. But when we want to turn these into products, there's an effort to then raise the bar, because the things that they're producing, it's like a good prototype, but it needs potentially significantly more work for it to be something that we might use in real life. So that doesn't just go with code. That has to do with the user interface, the user experience, all of these things. So I absolutely agree with what she's saying, and I think I understand her point about taste. Okay, let's continue a little bit more, and then I want to switch to this other tab real quickly. In some sense, if you look at it, there's going to be a supply of ideas, a massive increase in supply of ideas and prototypes, which is great. Oh, cool. So, yeah. I think she and I are thinking very similar things. Also, one thing that I think that there's some confusion about is, I think for people who haven't built massive systems, and this is a common thing that I see, especially in younger folk. So if you're maybe 18 years old, you might have a whole bunch of ideas. I know that I did at that age. And a lot of what I saw missing in the world, I would ask questions and be like, well, why doesn't this exist? Why doesn't this exist? And a lot of, I was sort of a crazy, annoying kid that was always trying to invent new things. And in my mind, before I really understood how the world really works, I thought the hard part was the idea. It's not. Spoiler, it's not. And I tend to try to minimize I try to prefer weak claims to strong ones, but I'm going to make a strong claim here and say that the challenge in building things is not the idea. Ideas are a dime a dozen. The challenge is building it. The challenge is taking the idea and building it in a way that people want to use it, that they become so compelled by the idea and it's so easy for them to use that they will adopt it. And if you are interested in this, I recommend you check out the book, The Magic of Thinking Big. The Magic of Thinking Big. I'll just type this in the chat. And I think this is a great book, and it talks about how, what does he say? Even the most mediocre idea that's realized is infinitely more important or meaningful than the most brilliant idea that is never executed on. So, again, being able to have an idea and being able to build potentially a rapid prototype for the idea. This may seem like this is like a really big deal. And in some ways, it's kind of cool that you'll be able to prototype it. But a prototype versus an actual real product, these tend to be two totally different things. And, maybe keep in mind that I've done a ton of production quality software engineering, but I've also done a ton of research prototyping. So I've actually been deeply involved in both areas. And so I'm speaking as someone that's worked and loves both sides of this, not just one side or the other. So I know how little effort it takes to build research prototypes compared to building hardened production quality systems. They're two completely different things. I mean, we're talking orders of magnitude more work to build something like Mentor versus building something like MISM or like the control flag system. This is just a paper, this is just a toy, this is an actual product that people can download, install, use. It's literally several orders of magnitude, 1,000x, 100,000x harder to build products that are real versus prototypes. So just because you can do rapid prototyping, which is cool, by the way, I think that's super great, that is not necessarily going to get you to the finish line. Okay. And I think that we've come to a conclusion on this article. Now, the additional piece that I want to share is not only do I agree with what she's saying about you shouldn't stop computer science, you should still code. There is this very important piece that we discussed, and it goes back to model collapse and the importance that AI systems are not ingesting AI-generated data. Otherwise, they become a black hole, right? The whole model collapse thing. And if you don't know what model collapse is, I strongly recommend you check out this VOD. AI model collapse and the copilot delusion. This will get you up to speed on what this model collapse thing is. So when we think about model collapse and we think about the space of computer science, not only do I agree with Microsoft's CPO in that computer science is necessary and writing code is necessary just to take the prototypes to production, it's not just that. It's that if we want the AIs to get better, which I do, and I think if you're watching this, you probably do too, then we need to have human-generated data. And in this case, that human generated data is code. So not only is it not going to go away, it's going to become more valuable that the people that can code and understand, like, I think they're going to become like these superstars because they'll be the ones that actually can understand the code, and they can generate novel code that could help the AIs improve. So their value now is being magnified in multiple dimensions. It's not a reduction of the need for software engineers. It is a magnification of not only the need for them, but the dimensionality in which they will be used. And so you will have at least a bifurcated space for software developers, and that is minimally, for the future of this, the software devs will be, one, valued for writing code to make prototypical systems production quality. That's the first piece. But valued for writing code to make AI code systems more robust, more feature-rich, etc. These are two distinct dimensions of the value of software engineers that I foresee being emerging given the increase of these AI systems. And so I think that, curiously enough, the need for computer science and people that can write software is going to increase, not decrease. And I mean this in a very serious way because of what we just talked about with the model collapse, is that they need novel data. And if most of the world are just using those systems to do prototypical code that they can't write, those people are not able to fix those systems. So we need more developers to work on code, more code, right? But then also we need superstars that can write code that is going to make the AI systems more capable and work in novel spaces. The last piece I want to share with you, which I think should make all of us, especially us developers, really have an aha moment, is in order for any of these AI systems to work, you must have a strong claim. This is how they work historically. And maybe there's some massive evolutionary change that disrupts this, but I have a hard time imagining it. Minimally, in order to build these AI systems, you must have some training data that they're going to learn on. Now, we were just looking at what the CPO at Microsoft was saying as far as these higher and higher levels of abstraction, right? So ask yourself this question: what is the next higher level of abstraction beyond things like JavaScript and Python? And then if you have that higher order abstraction, where does the code come from for that programming language or those programming languages that can then train the AIs so they know how to program in that language? I know where it comes from. It comes from the software developers. It comes from the humans that will then learn those languages, understand them at a very deep semantic level, and then write the code that will then be used to then train the AI so then they can produce it en masse. So, yeah, I think that it's becoming more and more clear to me that as the AI movement moves forward with software code generation, there is a direct correlation to necessitate the increase of software developers for minimally, we'll add this third one to valued for writing novel code in new programming languages that do not yet exist. Examples of that: Mojo. What is this other one? Zig. I think that's like a new one. Rust. Here you go. I'm just giving you a list of some languages that are like relatively new-ish that like, can these AI systems write code in Mojo? I don't know. Rust, I think, but maybe Zig. That's not entirely clear. So now you have three different things that these are AI specific tasks for human devs. And then this is for like production quality tasks for human devs. And there's probably more, but right, like this is just off the top of my head when I start to think about this. And you'll notice that without the AI movement, in my mind, all of these are less in they have decreased magnitude. So what I mean by that is if you don't have AI development, there is less of a need for human developers to do this. With AI development and like the vibe coding stuff, this becomes exacerbated and you need more developers now because of the lack of high quality, high fidelity code. Then you have to produce these incredible systems to move them from prototype to production. In addition, if you don't have AI generating systems, neither of these two jobs or tasks exist. Which leads me to my last point, and then I'm going to go back to Ivan and see if I can answer his question. But I think a lot of people have this weird sort of like just this sort of like existential fear that when change happens, suddenly there'll be like less jobs, or their job won't exist, or there just won't be a job. And I think that, I've discussed this with other people many times. The way that I see the world is there's an infinite number of jobs. And every time technology moves forward, it creates opportunity for more jobs to do that we couldn't do before because the technology didn't exist. So, for example, one of the jobs that I imagine us having to do is build spaceships to get to Mars. Right now, we don't have those jobs because the idea essentially of building spaceships to get to Mars is sort of like not a real thing. But if you raise the bar far enough to where we can start to explore this, then those jobs will exist. Just like, for example, we've just come up with 2 new classes of jobs for software developers. These don't exist without AI systems that are essentially creating the need for these jobs. We literally, so AI code generated systems have created at least 2 new classes of jobs that we've just come up with just off the top of our head that are expanding the need for software developers, human software developers, that didn't exist without this technology. So I think that it's a bit simplistic to make this assumption that just because technology is lifting these boats, that the boats somehow no longer exist. It's like, no, you just raised the boats. The boats are still there. They're just functioning at a higher level. Like maybe that's the way to think about this, is when the technology is coming, it's raising the water level. The boats still exist. They just function at a higher level now. So, for example, I don't really, well, I actually still do this, but now that I have like an automated vacuum cleaner, I don't have to vacuum my house. what does that mean? It just means I get to do other things with my time rather than vacuuming my house. There's still other tasks that I have to do, or there's tasks that are better uses of my time given my skill set that I can focus on because I don't have to deal with the minutia, right? It's sort of like spell checkers, right? Like, does anybody think that spell checkers are putting people out of jobs? But before spell checkers existed, there were people that literally what they did is they just did spell checking, right? And so we all use them today, and I think there's no fear that those things are moving society backwards. It's just the adaptation. Just us as a species continue to adapt and evolve as this new technology comes in. So my strong conviction is technology will continue to move us forward, hopefully. And when it does, it's nothing to be afraid of. It's more just understanding the ramifications of that and how that affects us. Okay, now let's take a look at what Ivan has to say here. Okay, so Ivan's asking about, does this not mean that we'll hit a plateau if we haven't already? LLMs and the echo chamber, the models would need lots of data points. No. Question mark. Yeah, so yeah, I think it's a great question. I think that the way that the data has I think that the way that we've trained many of these AI systems on data has been fairly superficial. And what I mean by that is a lot of this has been kind of just like a scrub of the internet, which is massive in terms of the effort to do this. But kind of think of it as like this. Imagine that you're cleaning your house. I'm going to keep going. Yeah. So imagine you're cleaning your house and you could say, well, I vacuumed and so all the floors are clean. But it's like, oh, but did you mop it? Did you scrub it? And so you can keep going lower and lower and do more and more to get like extra data or extra cleaning. And so those extra layers, I think, have not been done. As far as the code that developers can output, I think that yes, that's true. So Ivan's making the point that, but if we've exhausted all the data that exists in the world already training these systems, have we already reached kind of like a clipping point, and now they're going to be limited based on human generated information, which is going to be kind of slow. And I think that's a valid point. It also doubles down on the need for this symbiotic relationship between AIs and humans, is that if the AIs are limited by what the humans can do, then we need more humans that are more capable of doing things so then the AIs can level up. Rather than the opposite, which is like the AIs are going to level up beyond us and then, they're going to become the supreme beings. It's like, yeah, not really. They're really limited based on just what we can do. The other part that I want to share is, and in some sense that should give people some sense of calm, right? Because it's like, if you're worried that the AIs are going to level up to this grade, you can look at the dubiousness of some of the code that's being generated by the code generators, the code assistants today. And that is principally because the training data that they've used, which is out in the wild, is kind of teaching them that this is what you should generate. And I think this goes to the fact that this is why you don't use ground truth, because not all data is the same. And so if you're just looking at all the code in the world, you're probably going to learn some bad habits. Whereas if you're very particular about the things you learn, you can learn from very high quality people. And then that goes back to the need for software developers, not just writing code, but being like really high quality folks. That the more high quality folks we get that are producing really high quality, I think that we'll likely be able to level up the AIs more. I do realize that that is likely somewhat bandwidth constrained, right? Is that it's hard to sort of make that pipe really wide when the bar is basically hyper intelligent humans that are deeply vetted, have decades of expertise, and I think that that's definitely a limiting factor. The other piece, though, that I want to add, and by the way, I apologize if some people are getting confused. I'm going far down a rabbit hole with Ivan here. Maybe in the next episode, I'll rehash some of these things. But the other piece that I think is happening with AIs is they're getting better about learning from smaller and smaller data sets. So at the same time that humans will be needed to write the novel data in the new dimensions, the AIs are getting better on learning from smaller corpora of data. And that would mean that we would likely need less data than we've needed historically. The final piece, maybe the third piece, is the ways that people have been doing the learning on code, based on what I know, is been pretty, again, very simple. It hasn't, it's like the whole sweeping or vacuuming example, is they're just getting like the top layer, but there's much more rigor that they could invoke that would get you, I think, significantly better results. And I can't really go into too much detail on how you do that. At least I can't yet. But I've hinted at it in prior episodes. And so if you fiddle around with Mentor, we'll just leave it at that. So those of you who are using Mentor, if you're not using Mentor, go to our homepage and download the free thing and use it for 7 days. And if you're working on open source, we'll give you an open source license that you can use it for however long you want. But if you look at Mentor, you likely can get some clues on how you could do more intelligent training on code than what's being done today. Maybe I'll just leave it at that. Okay, cool. So I think we've got our Tuesday. Is it Tuesday? Our Tuesday morning stream mostly completed. I think we've covered the topic that I wanted to discuss, which is for us to keep coding. And we've got not just me saying this, but we've got Microsoft CPO. And then so we've got this notion of industry folks saying we're still going to need computer scientists. And keep in mind that one of the things that I think is quite powerful about this is these are some of the folks that were the first on the code assistant scene with GitHub Copilot. And back in the day, they were leading the charge saying things like, this is going to be the future of software development and the machines are going to be writing all the code. And so it's interesting to hear them walk some of these things back. I think that gives you, at least in my mind, a very true sense of what is really going on versus what maybe was hypey. And then on top of that, not only do we have that aspect, we also have the model collapse aspect. So we have not just Goju coming in saying, hurrah, let's keep coding, coders forever. We have concrete data that shows, no, this is a very scientific examination that's fact-based on why you would want this. This isn't just like, I feel a certain way. Like logically, I think we can all look at this and say, yeah, logically, that's pretty sound. Is it going to go exactly like this? Probably not, but directionally, it'll probably move something like this. That's my strong suspicion. So, all right, folks. Well, thanks so much. Jeters is great, and we'll see. Maybe I'll do another stream later today. Maybe I won't. Kind of just decides how crazy things at Merly get. So thanks, everybody. We'll talk soon.